smiling clown staring at your peephole to a drunken neighbor holding a rifle. 34 doorbell cameras, 34 disturbing encounters. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. TV Santa Claus. In 2019, residents in Virginia woke up on a random Sunday to a strange sight. A vintage, old-school television was sitting on their front door. At first, people thought it might be a mistake, maybe a wrong delivery address. One guy initially thought his son had brought the old set home. As people started coming out of their houses, they found their entire neighborhood dotted with these TVs. 50 houses, to be precise. One resident described the scene as like something out of the Twilight Zone, but that's not even the weirdest part. When homeowners checked their doorbell camera footage, they saw something even more unbelievable. The video clip showed a figure with a television completely covering their head. This TV Santa Claus walked up to their porch and carefully placed the TV. They looked directly at the camera as if they were challenging the homeowner before slowly walking away. In a clip from another house, the person is bobbing their head as they place the TV on the porch, as if they're savoring the moment. Police were as confused as everyone else and spent the morning collecting all the TV sets. Talk about putting your time to good use. This wasn't the first time TV Santa Claus had made an appearance. The exact same thing happened in a nearby neighborhood almost a year ago in August. Was it just a prank or some kind of warning? Package thief caught on camera. In 2017, a thief was on a mission to ruin people's holidays. He went from porch to porch and stole packages, but eventually he got too cocky and was caught on a doorbell camera. The clip starts with a man exiting a red car. He scans the street to make sure no one's around. He then cautiously approaches the front porch. As he reaches the door, he hesitates. Maybe it's the multiple cameras aimed right at him, or maybe the package just isn't what he wanted. For a moment, it seems like the homeowner got lucky. The man quickly turns around and goes back to his car. Just as he's about to move on to the next house, another car swoops in and blocks his path. One of the neighbors had tracked him down and wanted to put an end to the madness. The neighbor gets out and yells at the suspect to stop, but the thief has no intention of revealing himself. Instead of stopping, he hits the gas. He slowly pushes forward, forcing the neighbor onto the hood of his car. For a horrifying second, it almost looks like the car will run him over. Thankfully, the man is pushed to the side. He makes one last attempt and punches the side of the vehicle, but it's no use. The car speeds off, leaving a trail of stolen packages and shattered holiday spirit. Drunk intruder. A family in New Mexico was enjoying a peaceful night until a weirdo decided to make a late-night visit. The footage shows a young man stumbling up to the front door, his eyes barely open. As he gets closer, you can tell he's completely hammered. He probably couldn't even tell you his own name at that moment. He looks around the porch and spots the camera, but to him, it isn't only a camera, it's a challenge. He grabs the device and starts yanking at it. Good thing it was screwed on tight because that camera doesn't budge. But this man isn't finished. He uses the door frame to pull himself up and gets onto the ledge. The camera goes black for a moment as he shoves his body against it, blocking everything. It's almost freaky since he could barely walk straight a minute ago. Somehow he manages to get up, with one foot on each side of the wall, and you just know this isn't going to end well, and sure enough, he falls off to the other side. He'd have been lucky to make it home in one piece. Carnival goers using doorway as a toilet. Before each Notting Hill carnival, 69-year-old Susan Watts would leave town because she couldn't bear the noise outside her house. When she returned after the 2022 festival, she was welcomed by a strong stench and a used tampon. But what she was about to see on her doorbell camera was worse than she could have ever imagined. The clip starts with one woman. She walks down the steps to Susan's entrance as if she owns the place. She looks right at the camera and apologizes, clearly aware she's about to cross a line. "I'm so sorry, guys." She then shamelessly ducks into the corner, pulls down her shorts, and relieves herself right there on the ground. At first, you can't even believe your eyes, but then comes the horrifying parade of filth. Another woman comes down and pees in the very same corner. Then it's a man's turn. He comes down, faces the wall, and does the same. The camera records more than 30 people turning the property into a public urinal. At this point, the ground is soaked. What's infuriating is the sheer audacity of these attendants. The very first woman even comes back for a second time. She again looks into the camera and gives a pathetic excuse. "Sorry, I've been drinking, yeah." The most stomach-churning part is watching these people shamelessly walk through all of that. They use the spot as a urinal and take that filth with them into the streets. At the end of the video, you can practically smell it. Level 2. Old man attacked and robbed of $17,000. In Middle Village, two men were surveying the street when they spotted their target, a 66-year-old man carrying a bag. One of the attackers immediately moved in and shoved him from behind. The poor guy was caught completely off guard and crashed on the pavement. The CCTV footage shows a desperate struggle as the attacker tries to rip the bag away. At one point, he even stomps on the man's head, but the victim clings to his bag even as he's being dragged along the sidewalk. Finally, he loses his grip, and the strap slips from his fingers. With the prize in hand, the attackers take off, leaving the man injured on the sidewalk. Inside that bag was $17,000 in cash. Whether the attackers knew about the money or not is unclear, but it's truly shocking that no one intervened. The scuffle went on for almost a minute, with the victim screaming for help throughout. At one point, you even see a car passing by, but the man's cries were met with silence. Snake slithering on door. Allison Keller and her husband were sound asleep when they got a notification at 2 a.m. Their doorbell camera had detected motion. It was late, so they immediately checked the live view on their phone, a decision that saved them from a terrifying surprise. A giant snake was slithering and sliding all over their front door. Wide awake, they watched in horror as it twisted around the lock, the door handle, and even the camera itself. They tried flicking the lights and made noise to scare it away, but the snake didn't care. After what felt like the longest 10 minutes of Allison's life, the snake finally went away on its own. The couple was so shaken the next morning that they didn't even use their front door. Instead, they went through their garage. The snake was identified as a Texas rat snake. These snakes are pretty common in the area and can grow up to 6 feet long. Even though they aren't venomous, it doesn't mean they're harmless. They can still give you a nasty bite if they feel cornered. These sightings are also more common than you'd think. Another woman in Cypress, Texas, had a nearly identical experience. A snake slithered up to her front door in the middle of the day, and all she could do was pray for it to go away. So if you live in Texas, maybe look out for a silent visitor at your door tonight. Father shoots robber, defending family. A family was returning home one night when they were violently ambushed by an armed man. The video shows a girl walking up to the front door, followed by her younger sister, but just as the father steps onto the porch, a man lunges at him with a gun in his hand. Before the attacker could pull the trigger, the father draws his own weapon and shoots at the guy. It's a chaotic and terrifying moment. The father's lightning-fast reflexes turn the tables just in time. The attacker stumbles nervously and scrambles back to where he came from. Eyeball peering into camera. In 2018, a Reddit user uploaded a video that became a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk outside your front door. It all started when a homeowner was jolted awake by their dog barking. At that very same moment, they received a motion alert from their Ring camera. When they checked the live feed, they saw a giant eyeball staring right back at them. A man was pressed against the camera, mumbling to himself. He then began to knock and ring the doorbell, but the most unsettling part wasn't his attempt to enter, it was what he was saying. While most of his words were a jumbled mess, a few of his phrases were terrifyingly clear. At one point, he started muttering that he was going to hit them on the head, and he peered back into the camera and asked, "What do I say?" as if he was planning what he'd do if someone answered the door.
What do I do? What am I saying?
For nearly 4 minutes, the man moved erratically around the porch, and then he started tapping on the glass. The homeowner was now completely terrified and screamed that she was calling the police. The intruder's entire demeanor changed. Suddenly, he was just a concerned pet owner who was looking for his lost dog, Fido. He even suggested that they could all be friends and called her Honey. Other Reddit users pointed out that he may be suffering from a severe mental health crisis like schizophrenia, or maybe the answer is much simpler, that he was going from door to door hoping to find one unlocked. One fact is terrifyingly clear: locking the door that night might have saved this person's life. The Door Greeter. In 2023, Stevie Haven posted a series of TikTok videos that captured a terrifying encounter at his home entrance. In the first clip, Haven's father walks up to the house with his girlfriend. As the woman opens the door, you can just make out something dark on the door frame. As the man passes under it, the horrifying reality becomes clear: it's a rat snake. In an instant, it lunges at the father but misses him. But then the father has to go out again, and this time the snake doesn't miss. As soon as he walks back in, the snake bites him squarely on the head. The man looks up in shock, horrified by what's in front of him. I got bit! I got bit! He recoils so violently that he stumbles and falls backwards onto his porch. To make matters worse, his son later revealed that his dad's girlfriend also ended up getting bitten. In the final shot, the father is seen standing alone on his lawn, still rubbing his head. He eventually went inside, but not without looking up first. Door Kick Challenge. Remember Ding Dong Ditch? Well, that childhood game has evolved into something far more sinister. In Florida, it's now the Door Kick Challenge. It's a terrifying trend on TikTok that has the potential for real-world violence. The prank involves teenagers walking up to a house and kicking the front door as loudly as they can. The whole thing is usually filmed so it can be posted online for laughs and views. In one recent incident, the challenge was taken to a whole new level. On July 18th, just after 10 p.m. in Riverview, Florida, 5 young people were seen walking through the neighborhood. At first, it seemed they were just hanging around, but then one of the boys put on a ski mask and went up to a house with a Ring camera. The boy had an airsoft gun in his hands and kicked the front door with full force. But he didn't stop there. He fired his gun at the door and ran off. The homeowner was terrified. The teens probably wanted to startle the people inside, but they seriously underestimated the risk. This prank is incredibly dangerous in a state like Florida, where many residents have firearms in their homes. As the trend becomes more common, residents in Deltona are speaking out against this evil. One woman even had a panic attack because she was so distraught. Another man got so concerned that he grabbed his gun and ran to the front of the house. He was fully prepared for a home invasion. So, the next time you hear about a new social media challenge, think twice. But if there's one thing we do want you to watch online, it's our videos. So run, don't walk, and subscribe to our channel. Level 3. Lady with pram gets attacked by teenager. It was a beautiful day in Perth, Australia, and a woman was enjoying a quiet walk with her daughters. Nearby, 2 girls were zipping around on their scooters, but then one of them approached the woman from behind. What she does next is so infuriating, it's hard to even watch. Shocking CCTV footage shows the teen literally jumping at the mother. She grabs her by the hair and starts shaking her violently. The mother desperately tries to hold her ground and clutches the stroller for dear life. But the girl is out of control and manages to topple over both the mother and the stroller. It's heartbreaking to see the toddlers kicking helplessly in the air. The girl then drags the mother for another 15 meters down the concrete path before threatening to beat her with the scooter. The madness only ends when she snatches the woman's handbag and runs. But this story gets even more outrageous. The mother was expecting at the time. She suffered multiple cuts and bruises, but the trauma left her scared for her unborn child. When the teen was arrested, it was revealed that she had a violent history. Just days before the attack, she had used her scooter to knock another woman to the ground. When the judge asked her why she did it, her answer was sickening. Her cousin had told her to hit the woman. Father confesses to murdering his son on doorbell camera. David Contreras had been arguing with his son, Eric. But that fight escalated into an unimaginable tragedy when David did something he'd regret for the rest of his life. The family's doorbell camera recorded the chilling moment when he confessed to his wife. In the footage, we hear David's wife breathing heavily on the microphone. She's calling out to her husband, but she already knows the answer. David has just shot his own son.
David, talk to me.
What?
Is he alive?
He's not breathing. He's dead.
But why, David? Why?
As David comes out of the house, we can see it written all over his face. In a shaky voice, he reveals that Eric is dead. And in the background, his wife is heard sobbing uncontrollably while her friend takes over for her. Moments later, David called 911 to confess. And when the police arrived, they found the son deceased in the doorway. The father was then arrested and charged with his son's death. Eric was about to turn 23 in just a few days. And in the end, the man who was meant to protect him became the very person who took his life. Caught in the act. Ariel was working from his office when his phone buzzed with a Ring camera alert. He opened the app and for a second, he couldn't believe what he was seeing on his own front porch. A man and a woman were casually crouched over his package. The man had a box cutter and was ripping apart the box right in front of him. The woman was standing guard beside him, scanning for any sign of trouble. The most frustrating part was their confidence. The thieves were not trying to hide at all, but they made one critical mistake. They assumed no one was home. That's when Ariel's voice boomed from the camera speaker, "Hey, hey, hey, get away."
Hey, get away.
The man froze instantly with the box cutter still in his hand. There was a moment of panic, and then the two of them bolted. They scrambled off the porch and sprinted into the street in opposite directions. In the chaotic escape, the woman apparently got confused, and the camera caught her running back across the frame, chasing after her partner. Woman screaming for help. It was a quiet Tuesday night in a Los Angeles neighborhood when its residents heard someone screaming for help. "Help me! Somebody help me!" People immediately went out to check and saw a terrible scene. A man and a woman were arguing in a car, but something was definitely wrong. The woman was screaming at the top of her lungs, and the man was yelling back. He seemed to be apologizing to her, but his body language was aggressive. I'm sorry. We never actually see the woman on camera, but her screams are so raw, they create a scene far more terrifying than the camera ever could. But witnesses saw everything. The woman was desperately trying to get out, but the man was dragging her back by her hair. As the screams became louder, more people ran out to see, and the man knew he was running out of time. At that moment, the doorbell camera captured the car racing away with its trunk wide open. The woman was kidnapped. One of the neighbors immediately jumped into his own car and chased the suspect, but even with the footage and all the witnesses, it wasn't enough. The police couldn't find the car. The fate of the screaming woman remains unknown. DoorDash driver returns with a gun. Most people get pissed about a lousy tip, but this driver was willing to risk his freedom over it. It all started when Anthony Volino's daughter ordered groceries from DoorDash. The next morning, Volino was eating breakfast with his daughter and grandchildren when he heard banging at the door. It was Robert Delahant, the driver from the night before, but he was there to collect a tip. The crazy part is, Volino's daughter had already tipped him online, but Delahant thought it wasn't enough. When the daughter explained that she didn't have any cash, Delahant became angry and refused to leave. That's when Volino stepped into the doorway. When he tried to push the driver back, the situation quickly turned violent. The home's doorbell camera recorded the chaotic scene just as the two men began to scuffle on the front porch. As soon as Volino saw the driver reach for his waistband, he knew the man was going for a weapon. It was either him or Delahant. Volino managed to wrestle the gun away just as the cops arrived. But the consequences for Delahant were swift. He was charged with a felony, and DoorDash immediately fired him. Bangor man left friend's face a complete mess. In November 2023, Jonathan Barr was walking with his children when he spotted a friend who owed him money. A nearby doorbell camera shows them talking near a parked car. After Barr sent his kids home, the conversation took a dark turn. Out of nowhere, he punched his friend in the face. The hit was so hard that the man smacked his head on the curb and was knocked out cold. He then punched his unconscious friend 12 more times, leaving his face a bloody mess. He eventually decided he'd done enough damage and left the man on the pavement. He even glanced back a couple of times, but didn't call for help. Doctors later confirmed that the victim had multiple facial fractures with long-lasting damage. You'd think that would mean serious jail time, but Barr walked free. The judge said the victim provoked him over the debt. On top of that, the victim also refused to testify. Creepy clown. When the movie It came out in 2017, it didn't just bring Pennywise to the big screen, it also brought back a really bizarre trend. Some people began dressing as clowns to terrorize neighborhoods. For one person, the nightmare showed up right on their doorstep. At first, you can't even tell if there's someone there on the lawn, but then you spot a figure lurking in the shadows. As it slowly moves toward the front door, you realize it's a clown with a bunch of balloons. He silently drifts up to the front door. The way he stops and stares directly into the camera is just chilling. It's like he's looking right through your soul. The white makeup doesn't help either. The sharp black lines completely twist his face into a sinister smile. You almost expect him to lean in and whisper that you'll float too. After a few moments of just standing there, the clown slowly backs away. He turns for one final look and then disappears into the darkness. The incident sparked a lot of fear in Wisconsin. Some people believed this clown was a local figure known as Gags the Green Bay Clown. Gags would appear in random places late at night, simply standing there silently without moving a muscle. It got so creepy that people made a Facebook page just to track him. Unfortunately, the homeowners never found out if it was a harmless prankster or something far more sinister. Masked intruder. It was a quiet Sunday night in Bristol until Kathleen's doorbell rang. She yelled out asking who it was, but there was no answer. She went outside, and that's when she spotted a man driving away in his car. It was only when she pulled up her doorbell footage that the real terror set in. A person was trying to open her door. His face was partially hidden by his glasses and hoodie, but it was his mask that creeped out Kathleen. Its smile was frozen and unnatural, like a silent warning. The figure first knocked on the door and waited for a full 15 seconds. Then he tried the doorknob and glanced at the camera. He was daring Kathleen to do something. He then rang the doorbell, and when the door wouldn't open, he pulled the sleeve over his hand and wiped his fingerprints away. As if that wasn't scary enough, Kathleen also noticed other disturbing details. The individual had a bag and a heavy object on his back. The incident left the community on edge. One neighbor was so spooked she installed her own security camera. But for Kathleen, that smile was burned into her mind. She had only one question: will he be back? Level 4. Porch pirate meets an armed homeowner. A porch pirate in Detroit thought he knew what he was getting into, but then he almost paid the price with his life. It happened on a quiet, snowy street. Doorbell footage shows an SUV pulling onto the street. A man gets out and confidently walks up to a house. His eyes are set on a package sitting on the porch. He quickly grabs the box and walks away, and for a second, it looks like another successful snatch. Suddenly, the front door flies open and an elderly man steps out. He's holding a rifle, and he's not playing around. Put that shit back.
Put my back on this. Yeah. Yeah, I saw you when you got out the car.
The tables turn and the thief's confidence shatters. He carefully places the package back on the porch, but his partner isn't waiting around. The SUV speeds off, leaving him stranded. His ride was gone, his friend was gone, and all the thief could do was run. Coyote attempts to drag toddler. It was Friday afternoon in the Woodland Hills neighborhood, and Ariel Eliyahuo had just picked up his daughter Aria from daycare. He took her out of the car and placed her on the driveway. For a split second, he turned his back on her to reach inside the SUV and grab her toys, and that's when he heard a scream. Ariel thought his daughter had just fallen down, but when he turned, he saw a scene straight out of a nightmare. Coyote had grabbed his little girl by the leg and was trying to drag her away. Without a second thought, Ariel ran and scooped his daughter into his arms. The coyote let go, but it kept staring at the girl. Ariel then threw a water bottle that finally scared it off. Once they were safely inside, the mother noticed blood on Aria's pants. The coyote had scratched Aria's leg. They immediately took her to the emergency room for her rabies shots. That incident left the family traumatized. The children weren't even allowed to go in their backyard anymore. It was the 7th coyote attack in Los Angeles that year. Where Ariel was sharing his story, something incredibly bizarre happened. A coyote appeared at the house again. Ariel was fed up at this point. He grabbed a piece of wood and chased it into the bushes. He believed it was the same coyote that attacked them. Man pulls pistol on doorbell camera. In July 2025, a man in Brooklyn posted a chilling video on YouTube. According to the homeowner, a stranger had been showing up at his house for several days. The man was convinced his children were inside. The homeowner repeatedly told him he had the wrong address, but the man wouldn't listen. Then one day, the situation took a terrifying turn. The doorbell camera recorded the man walking up to the front door. For a few moments, he stands there with his back to the camera. Then he turns and knocks on the door aggressively, but he doesn't seem satisfied. Suddenly, he pulls out a pistol. He raises the gun and points it directly at the camera lens. He brandishes the weapon threateningly and yells,
"Kill you, bitch. You and your mother family. Keep playing with me."
The clarity of the footage is what makes this so unsettling. You can see the weapon in his hand and you can clearly see his face. The man doesn't seem bothered at all. What would you do if there was no camera? Doorbell camera catches gunman before shots fired. On North Sheridan Avenue, a gunman turned a quiet neighborhood into his personal shooting range. For one man, that nightmare unraveled in his own backyard. The man was working in his home office when he got an alert. Someone was in his yard. As soon as he opened the app, he was frozen with shock. A man was getting out of a car with a rifle in his hand. The homeowner watched in horror as the attacker walked up to his house. Even worse, there were kids inside the house at that very moment. They had no idea an intruder just broke in with a gun. The father immediately rushed to his children and pulled them upstairs. Moments later, you hear screaming as the armed man runs out of the house. He gets in his car and speeds off. The man was hunting for someone, and he was becoming more frantic. Then another camera on the street caught the same car speeding away. A few seconds later, you hear an explosion of gunfire. The man apparently found his target. Helicopter crash. In 2022, a helicopter was on a test flight in the Fresno neighborhood when the pilot heard a loud pop. Little did he know that it was the tail rotor failing, and he was about to lose all control. The doorbell camera captured the scene that could have come straight out of an action movie. In the beginning, we only hear the chopping sound of the helicopter, but it keeps getting louder and louder. Suddenly, the helicopter drops into view, spinning wildly. It smashes through a palm tree before slamming into the front yard. There's a loud crash followed by stunned silence. Then the door opens as neighbors rush out to see the wreckage that just fell from the sky. The scene was chaotic when paramedics arrived. The pilot was on the ground with serious injuries while the passenger was already on his feet. But for the people on the ground, it was a near miss. Moments before the helicopter crashed, you can see a car passing by that exact spot. Another neighbor who lives just across the street had left her house only 15 minutes before the incident. She later told reporters that she felt blessed because it could have landed right on top of her. Level 5. Attacked with crossbow. You think you've seen it all, and then you see a man shooting a crossbow in the middle of a street. Around 10 p.m., a Ring doorbell camera on Donway Lane recorded a man running for his life. As he reaches the door, you can see his bloody face. And seconds later, it becomes clear who he's hiding from. A masked man comes into view with a crossbow in hand and aims it right at him. The victim grabs the crossbow in panic and tries to prevent the inevitable. He's constantly ringing the doorbell and calling for help throughout, but it's too late. The attacker seizes his opportunity and fires an arrow directly into the man's leg. The man doubles over and screams in agony just as the attacker does something truly sadistic. He steps forward and yanks the arrow out of the victim's bleeding leg. And that's when the footage cuts. The hunt was over. Van goes up in flames. In 2017, a carpet cleaner was on a house call. He had no idea that his work van was about to become a ticking time bomb. In a doorbell camera, the van was seen parked by the driveway. Suddenly, a violent burst of fire erupted from inside. The van was immediately swallowed by flames with thick black smoke rising into the sky. A resident saw what was happening and quickly called the fire department. The doorbell footage showed two men in a state of panic. With every second, the blaze was becoming more intense. Just when it seemed like it couldn't get worse, the van exploded, sending a huge fireball shooting straight up into the air. You have to remember, cleaning vans are full of flammable chemicals. This fire could have easily jumped to surrounding houses or cars, turning an unfortunate situation into a full-blown disaster. That's when the fire department showed up. They blasted it with their hoses and finally put the fire out. By the time the smoke cleared, the cleaner's van was a charred wreck. Suspect points gun at home. This is what one woman in Georgia saw on her doorbell camera. At around 4 a.m., two armed men came into her driveway. One immediately got to work and broke into her car, but it's the second man who makes this footage so terrifying. He stood guard with a handgun pointing it directly at the front door. He was waiting for someone to come outside. The first suspect was trying to start the car without the key when suddenly all hell broke loose. The car alarm starts blaring and the windshield wipers begin swiping like crazy. For a full minute, there's just chaos. But the armed man doesn't even move. He keeps his gun ready, waiting for any sign of movement. It was the fifth time someone had attempted to steal this woman's car, but this was the first time she was truly scared for her life. The man eventually gave up and fled. But for the woman, the sound of a car alarm will never be the same. Bear attack. 23-year-old Alexander was leaving for work when his life flashed before his eyes. He was just locking his door when he heard something behind him, and as soon as he turned, he was paralyzed with fear. Two black bears were wandering in his yard. Alexander tried to scare them off by yelling, and instead the younger bear ran around his porch to attack. The doorbell footage cuts out right at the most harrowing moment with the bear jumping at Alexander. What the camera didn't see was the brutal struggle that followed. The bear hit Alexander's arm and clawed at his ribcage. Alexander somehow managed to kick the bear's feet and hit it on the nose. He then made a run for it. In that split second, he weighed his options. He could try to get back inside with two bears just feet away from him, or he could run toward the woods where the mother bear was waiting for her cubs. He chose a third option, to run down the street. He then called his girlfriend and told her to bring towels because he was bleeding all over the ground. Alexander's trials were far from over. He had serious injuries to his left arm and the left side of his abdomen. Two of his fingers had nerve damage and were barely functioning. So if you ever see a bear in your yard, don't yell. Level 6. Man shoots girlfriend. An argument on a quiet street. Scream for help, then silence. This dispute claimed the lives of one Brooklyn couple, and it was all recorded for the world to see. On February 11th, Gabriel Sanchez and his girlfriend were seen arguing on the sidewalk. Neighbors would later recall hearing a woman scream for her life. The video shows the argument escalating as Sanchez pulls out a gun. His girlfriend tries to run, but he opens fire, shooting her in the head. She collapses instantly. As the camera keeps recording, Sanchez turns the gun on himself and pulls the trigger. Bizarrely, he manages to sit up and shoots himself a second time. A neighbor who had known Sanchez for decades watched the entire scene in disbelief. He said that Sanchez had his troubles, but no one ever thought he was capable of this. But it seems Sanchez was hiding a dark past. He had a history of 9 arrests, including some of the most violent crimes. His inner monster had finally broken free. Neighbor with assault rifle. Imagine your neighbor getting so pissed at you that they show up at your door dressed for war. Leah DeErico was at home with her kids when she saw a man approach her house. As soon as she saw the rifle in his hand, she took the kids to the bathroom. The stranger was her neighbor, Kevin Flaherty, armed and wearing a bulletproof vest. The surveillance footage shows Flaherty walking right up to the front door with the weapon. He reaches up and puts his hand over the camera, trying to block the view. Leah tried to call 911, but her phone died during the call. She was terrified for her children's lives. Kevin's motive wasn't clear, but there were some disturbing details that explained his violent behavior. A few days before the incident, Kevin's daughter Emily had run away from her home, and Kevin had brandished a firearm at his house and threatened to shoot his own wife and daughter. Emily was so scared that she stayed with Leah's family for 2 nights. It's possible that Kevin came here to hurt whoever he could and then get into a gunfight with the police. Why else would he wear a bulletproof vest? Mother's Day robbery. It was Mother's Day. Derek and his friends had just returned from a party and were saying their goodbyes. Suddenly, a man approached them from the shadows. At first they thought he might be asking for directions, but then they saw the gun. A chill ran down Derek's spine. He recognized the man. He had been watching them from his SUV. The attacker told them to get up against the wall. He also threatened to shoot their legs if anyone turned around. He then shoved them to the ground and asked for their valuables. You can hear the pure panic in one woman's voice as she frantically hands over her rings and wallet. Derek also skinned his knee in the scuffle. The robbers seemed pretty nervous too, which only made the situation more unpredictable. The friends were terrified that they might get shot. After grabbing their belongings, the robber fled in his car. The doorbell footage is so clear that you can actually see the robber's face and hear every word. And it was this crucial mistake that ultimately got him caught. It was later discovered that the robber was already on probation and had an ankle monitor. Level 7. California officer ambushed on a doorstep. On July 27th, Officer Ayala got a 911 call from Pueblo Trail. There was a family argument and things were getting out of hand. What the officer didn't know was that he was about to walk into an ambush. Doorbell footage shows the moment Ayala approaches the house. He knocks on the door and announces himself as the police, but before he can even finish, the door flies open. A man lunges at him with a huge kitchen knife. This was Juan Sosa, who was already wanted by police. But what he does next is one of the most unhinged things ever caught on camera. Sosa immediately grabs the officer and tries to stab him. Ayala desperately tries to disarm him and pushes Sosa against a wall. As the two struggle, a man and woman rush out of the house. The woman tries to get the knife away from Sosa and grabs the blade with her bare hands, but the guy is relentless. He switches the knife to his other hand, stabbing the officer's back over and over again. Ayala is literally fighting for his life at this point. Finally, he grabs Sosa's legs and throws him to the ground. And just then, another officer runs up to the house and disarms him. Ayala was stabbed 5 times that day. If it wasn't for his police vest, the incident would have ended his life. Arsonist lights house on fire. A Ring camera in Georgia captured the horrifying moment a man set an apartment on fire. Around midnight, neighbors in DeKalb County were woken up by noise. One woman heard what sounded like someone running down the stairs. When she checked her camera, she saw a man throwing something at the doorway. Instantly, the entrance was engulfed in flames. The man then ran away, slapping at his pants, which had also caught fire. The apartment belonged to Stephanie. She was at home with her son at the time, completely unaware that her life was about to go up in flames. The fire quickly spread around the apartment, making it impossible for Stephanie to get out. Her son had to make a desperate choice. He jumped from a window to save his life and broke his pelvis. Neighbors were not spared either. The fire damaged 3 other units and left multiple families homeless. When the firefighters arrived, Stephanie was unresponsive in a bathroom. She had severe burns all over her body and had inhaled a lot of smoke. And tragically, she passed away in the hospital. It turns out the suspect was Stephanie's ex-boyfriend who had moved out the day before. But it's the details from the fire that are truly haunting. A woman later told a reporter she could hear Stephanie screaming and hollering for her life. At one point, she saw Stephanie's hand in the window, desperately calling for help, and then the screaming stopped. It's a memory that has kept her from sleeping. Double caught on doorbell. In 2022, a doorbell camera caught the moment Philadelphia's Point Breeze unexpectedly turned into a war zone. At first, everything seemed normal. Cars are parked along the street and people are going about their evening. Then, the sound of gunfire rips through the air. People start scrambling for their lives, desperate to find any cover. The camera captures the horrifying instant a man is shot. He collapses and frantically crawls under a parked car, still trying to escape the hail of bullets. A second man isn't so lucky. After being hit, he desperately limps toward the same car, hoping to hide behind it, but he only manages a few steps before getting shot again. This time he falls hard and blood pools around him on the concrete. Another man is also hit. He tries to find cover but ultimately collapses on the sidewalk. When the dust is settled, the street was littered with over 30 shell casings, and police later confirmed that 2 men had died, and one of them was shot 15 times. Brutal execution of a woman. Just 3 months after losing her sister to senseless gun violence, a mother of 4 meets the same tragic fate. CCTV footage shows Courtney Reese unlocking her front door when a masked man approaches her. She immediately spots the gun in his hand and starts pleading for her life.
Wait!
Her voice trembles as she repeats the word please over and over. The man ignores her completely and raises the gun. There's a click, but it seems the weapon is jammed. The man pulls back the slide and raises it again. There's no hesitation, no remorse. He opens fire at point-blank range. Reese's scream is cut off as she's shot 10 times. The pace is so relentless that the camera is momentarily clouded by gunpowder and smoke. The gunman then runs off into the night. For a few moments, the only sound we hear is Reese's heavy, labored breathing. She tries to get up, but all we hear is the chair screeching. And just like that, Reese took her final breaths on her doorstep. There are also some fictional stories that mimic such real-life horrors. And if you have the heart for it, check out these disturbing movie endings.